Ultimately, my story is one of overcoming the impossible, rebellion and war, organised crime, and over a decade of the UK's worst high-security prisons, and the worst people known to man, the darkness, the violence, and thankfully, the transformation. Strange things happen to a man as he travels his redemption. As he goes further to find the great man who he has yet to become, finally conquering the demons and rough seas that drove him, faced with the truth of himself and the mirror of his choices. My name is Stephen Gillen. Let's go deep. It is said you can only go as deep with another, as deep as you yourself have been.
And this fella fell right in the car where I was sitting. I remember the bloody face on the side of the window screen. Grabbed me and I was crying, Dad, Dad. Was I violent? I'll rephrase it to you. Was I capable of being violent? Yes, I was.
Hello, welcome to another edition of the Stephen Gillen Crime Files. We're going to go back behind the curtain today on a very deep, intense story for you today. Story of suicide, death, international drug smuggling, organised crime, imprisonment, and ultimately transformation. My guest today is the wonderful Michael Emmett. Welcome on the Stephen Gillen Crime Files, Michael.
Nice to see you, Stephen.
Thanks for coming on. You've got a very deep story. I'm going to go straight into it. You come from a very criminal family, it can be said, right?
Yeah, we do. Very criminal family, yeah.
You know, your father, you know, we're talking about the pedigree here. Your father was friends with, really close with people like the Krays, the Richardsons, very close to the train robbers, all of them guys, Tommy Wisby, all of them guys.
Very much so, yeah.
So what was it like growing up with a father like that?
I see him have a very violent fight in Battersea Rise when I was about 8 or 9 years of age. And this fella fell right in the car where I was sitting. I remember the bloody face on the side of the window screen. And then he grabbed me and I was crying, Dad, Dad. And he grabbed me, he was so sorry. He was a big criminal and he was a violent man, he could have a proper old fight.
So what did he do to be so high in the hierarchy and so respected within them high echelon gangsters of the day?
The reason why he had a lot of respect, because he was a tough man. He was game with the Bible. He was friends with Freddie Foreman growing up. Ginger Dennis was his pal, Arthur Sutty, bank robber.
What was his job then? What was his job? What was his job description?
They were robbing safes, yeah. But in the late 70s and early 80s, he became a very, very big major player in drug smuggling.
Now, Michael, this is a story of unbelievable depth you have. You know, you go away for 4.5 tons of cannabis with your father. So as a young kid, did you look up to your father?
I used to always be with my dad. He used to have a car front over in Hendon. And I used to go there every Saturday. I loved being in the cars, all the lovely cars. And I was always with him with our dog. But I started to see things about my dad that I didn't like. When I was about 13, I had a trial for Fulham Football Club. The kid hit me in the eye on the pitch, and my dad ran on the pitch and smacked him round the face, ruined my football career. I disliked him over that. He was always on me, and I think where my mum smothered me, she could see I walked with a limp. So she put the arm of love round me, and I think he got jealous of that and all me old man.
Why the rage? Where does it come from?
Couple of things. So I believe we pick up behaviours from what we see, but I think we're born with it and all.
A bad seed.
Bad seed, a corruptible seed, yeah? I remember I didn't feel right. Because it developed when I was 5 or 6. I wasn't taught rage when I was 5 or 6.
But the why. Take us back to the why.
It could be the abuse.
This is a story of unbelievable depths as it weaves and turns. So with a more really sympathetic ear and eye to what you've been through and on what is an amazing journey, it has to be said. You were sexually abused, Michael.
Yeah.
Could you take us there? Do you mind taking us there? Could you just tell us how someone like you from such a elite criminal family, it has to be said, was exposed to something like that and how that happened?
Well, I don't think if my parents knew, it would have broke their heart. But it was, what was weird about it, it was the babysitter, and we knew her. What was weird about it is I kept my mouth shut. Yeah, that was weird. And
this is a female, right?
Female,
it's a female.
It's a female, yeah. That was weird. And I don't even think it sound even weirder, but I started to enjoy it.
When did it start, Michael?
When I was
audience.
When I was about 5 or 6.
Wow, that's very young. So.
Mate, it's naughty. You know, I've said it before, I've got grandchildren of 5 or 6. I couldn't imagine I'd want to kill someone who'd done that to them. It wasn't about penetration, it was about fondling and playing and things like that. I mean, she was about 17, I was 6. What creates a woman of 17 to want to have sex with a boy of 6? And so that played a major role, and it was no excuse, but I replicated the behaviour, not that I abused women by taking advantage of them, but I abused women emotionally. So, and what was another big thing for me, my mother, she had a compassion of love. The pedestal that my mum was on for me was unconditional love. So the other lady who abused, so the 2 women I had in my life at that particular time, I repeated it in my relationships, and I always had 2 women in my life. Unfairly, I always had the mother of my children in the background, who was beautiful, I love her dearly today, and I always had an affair. Not nice, but they both represented the dishonesty in me around sex, who I was, and where, I mean, some of the places that this drove.
Michael Emmett believes in the sins of the father. Born into a top echelon South London criminal family, he lived the senior target criminal life to the full, and ultimately he had to survive it. His story is a deep, dark and painful one. But what of the costs and rewards of a life lived, so connected to such circles? Where did the serious criminality come in? Was you groomed into that? Did you feel it was a rite of passage? Or was it Michael taking what he wanted? Which one was it, Michael?
Now, at the latter part of the late 70s, won't even be talking about him today, Stephen, but he passed away, Joe Park. So my dad and Brian Emmett, they was active with stuff coming into the UK when I was very young, yeah. So they'd send me out to Holland, I'd do bits and pieces. He didn't want me in it, but once he could see that I was gravitating, I got nicked a few times myself, he said, you know, he knew I was a wild card as well. He knew I was a bit nutty, and I think he wanted me with me because he knew I was game as well. But I saw things at a very young age in the criminal activity, especially around the drug game. And I'm talking about late 70s, early 80s, which was a lot of money. And I used to go over there. Joe said, "Listen, he's there, so and so's there," and I used to get them their bit of cocaine. I mean, I remember when Eddie Richardson would come out of prison, he'd come over to my dad's yard. I'm walking in a room with people who've got gun holsters in their hands, and these are proper people, you know, I'm talking about proper people. Well, and in the end, I weren't impressed with any of them, yeah? I was always known as Brian's son. I was known as Michael, that's Brian's son. So the resentment towards him came.
You're always the son of the great man.
Yeah.
You know, it's always harder for the son of a great man to be a great man because he has to be more great than the father before him, even twice as much.
Correct.
Why weren't you impressed? Was it to do with your father? Was it pride? Was it fear? Or was it to do with you, Michael?
Good question. But in the end, I started to realise that these people were just human beings. There was a part of me that I could have done what they'd done when I was 20.
Right, because I'm interested in your story, Michael.
Yeah.
This is why I'm bouncing off the elements here on the way through, because we want to unpack it, not just to see the drivers of what propelled you on your journey, but ultimately the solutions to help people so that they can step into the best of themselves and not go back into darkness, Michael.
That's right.
These are why these things are important. And we're looking for translations that on the Stephen Gillen Crime Files, very innovative platform that we would not or may not have heard before. We go right to the rawness, right to the truth. So why keep going?
My dysfunction, I thought my ability to walk around in criminal activities I found very easy. Going to work to a 9-to-5 job, whether that was a lie in my head, it didn't resonate for me. I felt like I was built for this, you know, I motivated myself towards it, and I love the money, Stephen. I love the money. But I became involved very heavily in myself. I went to live where they were going to live in Spain, and I started smuggling down there as a kid with the help of my father. I was 23 years of age. That's when the drive started to come for me, when I was on my own, independently, wanted by the police, living in Spain, and then I started to smuggle on my own.
So I'm guessing the greed is there, certainly.
Massively.
You know, I'm guessing the independence and wanting to break away from that mould that you had been cut from right in the past, and to see more life, but to be more of a gang boss at that time. Now this leads you down a very, very dark road. On the Stephen Gillen Crime Files, the interviews really get intense. You're talking about real life target criminals who have a lot of trauma behind them. You know, they've lived a life that most would never even come close to. But I really go into these questions to get the truth, because I know that the real jewels are when we really get to the heart of it and get that really unique content that hopefully can save lives. So for you, as you've come forward in your life now, and you're coming towards what would be a 12-year sentence of imprisonment for over 4.5 tons of cannabis importation. Just before we lead up to that, what was your life like, and what does power mean to you?
That was in the early 90s, but that period of the 80s, when I was still a young man, My father and Joe Pyle, they was sort of targeted by the sort of customs and excise and criminal intelligence, and they obviously done things extremely well for themselves because they reigned for a long time, but you know there's no free lunches. They got nicked in 1988, I think it was, and it ended their reign together. They got out of it. They was arrested for a ton of cannabis in the Irish Sea. They was on the book in the scrubs, and that was the end of Joe and Brian. Yeah, you know, Joe and the old man went out to the Five Families. Joe Bogano out in the States. You know, I went out and met them. So it was Holland, Morocco. It was all that was going on, and I was in awe of it. And I just liked the bag of money I used to get. So whatever they had going on, but there was the shooting involved. There was all sorts of things going on that I used to listen to and hear. And I was only a young kid, but I was a game kid, yeah. But I was still very broken.
You was a protege then under these two and your father, is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I mean, with Joe, he was what they wanted. He was that sort of London lookalike gangster, the overcoat and all that. But Brian used to go along, and Brian was a wild card. He was the Irish wild card. And my dad didn't want that sort of notoriety. They all knew him. He played a major part in all what was going on. There was a kidnap involved once when there was money taken out to Italy and they kidnapped my mum and dad. And they got on the phone and I was screaming and shouting. And my mum said, "Love, it was lovely. We had 4 days in a hotel overlooking the sea." The old man didn't like it. Joe had to get on the phone. Back in the day, and they're all dead now, so otherwise I wouldn't be saying it. Back in the day, the route that they had into the UK every couple of months was unbelievable. But I was on the shirt tail to that. I'd deliver money. I was getting grand drinks like sticks were breaking. And then I worked my way through that, then the disasters came. Because there's always a consequence.
So what was the thing that started everything to spiral downwards?
The sabotage sword. I don't feel good enough. I want to destroy everything that's good. I got arrested. I was in a police chase in a car. The guy's dead now, God rest his soul. He was a good man, he was proper. He was out there. So it was a police chase, there's about 10 cars, bomb, 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 helicopter's gone up. We go through someone's garden, you know what I mean, that madness, screaming and shouting. There's 7 ounces of coke in the car. They weren't mine, but that don't matter. So he's hid them in the steering wheel of this car. As we go through this garden and come out the other side, we go through this fence and we're at a corrugated post doing about 60, 70 mile an hour. The car goes up in the air, he smashes, the steering wheel embeds in his chest, he goes through the window and I damage my feet. And there was 1 ounce of coke that I slung. They never see it. Anyway, we're nicked. I abscond. I go to live because it was the time that everyone lived in Marbella. So I go down to Marbella, wanted. They all come to help me. Good old faces, Freddie Foreman. There was the famous 5, Ronnie Knight. They was all there. And because they knew Dad, you know, they took a shine to me and they invited me into their world. But I didn't want to be in their world. I wanted to be in Michael's world. So I had influence, a little bit of influence down there. So I got at it myself, yeah.
For the people out there, you know, a lot of our audience, they have not come close to looking behind the curtain. So take us through from start to finish. What would that look like?
I'd go out to Morocco, I'd oversee what was going on. It would be brought into the British waters, and my bit was having connections here in the UK to sell it. And I used to like counting the money, to be honest with you, Steve. We had a voicemail in Paris that used to leave a voicemail there. You would get the message, go straight away there, listen to it in a Donald Duck's voice. The army that was behind the people, what was doing it was powerful. One of the guys, he escaped from a French jail. He had his hand shot off. So you're talking about people, they were a proper crazy gang, yeah? And they was all older than me. The last one I got arrested for was a high level of organised crime way beyond my expertise.
It could be said there are many victims,
Yeah.
you know, in the trauma of a life of organised crime, Michael.
True.
It's an evil life.
Absolutely.
It has to be said.
So with Martin, he was one of them who escaped the black curse of what was over the family. He was a pure, wonderful young boy. So one night we went out and we used cocaine, and it was Charlie Wilson, the great train robber. All on our toes, most of us, all wanted by the police. I'd call my brother peaceful. I'd call my brother, he's full of love. Anyway, as he's driving back, there's a road called Bella Medina, a bit of a chicane. He goes underneath a lorry and it kills him stone dead. But stone dead, it was naughty what happened to this kid. He didn't deserve that. But I always thought it was a repercussion of what had gone on for what we'd done. When I had to go and identify him, which was horrendous, I felt so guilty that it was him and not me. And because he was the nice one, I won. His girlfriend, he just told me his girlfriend was 3 months pregnant. He's never met his son. And it spun me out of control. So the hole that we speak about, which was filled with drugs, sex addiction, sex abuse, criminal father, violence, dysfunction, it was just another, it split me open, him dying. I was out of breath. It freaked me out. But I've learned to cover it up with crime, with drugs, whatever I'd done. So I just turned again to cocaine. My dad blamed me, bless his heart. He blamed me, he said, he was on your watch, you effing lost it. He tried to get his son out of the coffin. He was in bits, I don't want to say, but there was nothing left of him, barring his head and bits of it. And it was naughty. And as he tried to get him out of it, he said, I want my son, you've killed him. So when I got up in the morning, I woke up and I thought, what's going on here? Remember, I had every night on cocaine and drink. And I went into the toilet in my bathroom. And you know the big mirrors they have in Spain?
Yeah.
I looked up on the mirror and it put in Vaseline, I love you, in big letters like that, I love you. And I looked, I thought, my God, mine, where is he? I found out later that day that he died. He was my soulmate. I loved him more than I loved anybody else. I adored him because he was what I really wanted to be. He was a very nice, very bright, very handsome, very kind, and it devastated me. To drugs, I started having affairs. The sexual addiction come out of me, or the sexual abuse. I started having affairs with women who were close to me, friends of mine's wives, 2 of them, wanted to get caught, wanted to destroy everything, screamed at God, what have you done?
What do you think you really felt and what you really wanted to do after the death of your brother Michael?
I wanted to see him again, I wanted to bring him back, I wanted to be different. I got really ill, Stephen, after he died for about 2 or 3 years. I was trying to do business, but I'll be honest with you, I was a liability. It was 17 people there they arrested, and I remember I took over with my voice. My mate dived out the car, they started pistol whipping my mate. The driver was an old bank robber, he collapsed. Anyway, I got out of the car and I said, well, fucking shut up, whatever. And for a moment they stopped. I wasn't worried, there was guns, they was kneeled over pointing guns at me, behind me. Put your out, I said no. But when I was on the floor, sitting on the floor eventually, with a gun pointed at me, and he went to me, a penny for your thoughts. And I said, my 3 kids, mate, and all tears come on. And I was sitting there, and that's when I really believed that my old life ended and my new life began, because prison was a massive turning point for me.
So you got 12 years, right? Arrested with your father as well, so it's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's all...
I'll tell you what it was, Stephen. There was a guy, done 22 years. Yeah, he was a lifer. Yeah. And he said to me, Michael, there's only one person who you've got to get on with in the nick. He said, it's yourself. And that night, when I closed the door, I knew that I didn't get on with Michael. I knew that there was an ism in me that used crime, other people's women, money, poverty. But something happened. Yeah. Now, if it was a choice again, if I said, look, if you're going to church, you're going to get well and all things like that, I'd have gone drop. Yeah. But something happened. And for me, it's about love. And I had to learn to love Michael because I didn't like myself. And so Samantha Fox instigated the church coming down. So this thing came, it was a powerful movement. It went around all the prisons. We're spiritual beings and we need to make our amends and forgive ourselves so we can forgive other people. And this is not a cop-out, because everything I'd done, they were the choices I made based on the dysfunction and the trauma of who I was. It wasn't about becoming a Christian and going to church.
But is there redemption for Michael Emmett?
Oh, absolutely. I work in the prisons. I volunteer in the prisons. But it's enabled me to love myself because of the actions I have today. God's blessed me with 8 grandchildren. Yeah, incredible. And when I lost all my money, because when I come out of prison, I was a very wealthy boy, and I lost it all. I lost everything. I lost a fortune. I was the owner of a group, Kasabian, a music group. I had the supermarkets, the flower business. I had a radio station, and it was all built on sand, Stephen. Yeah, and I lost it all. And in losing it all, it was like as if I started again. That was the biggest drama of my life.
Your rock bottom?
My rock bottom was 14 years ago. Because everything I had was a mask. I used to hide behind it. I used to have prayer meetings in my house from the church and then go and sleep with someone else's wife. So that yin and yang of me, but today I don't do that and I land it here. So what God done to me, I don't want to get too spiritual here, but I have a strong faith that there's something up there far greater than me and it loves us, yeah? When I had no money and my grandchildren started being given to me, instead of flying them out to New York first class like I did my kids, I had to take them over the swings like normal people do and get on a bus. That was so cleansing of my soul. Understanding that I'm not the most important thing in the world, life ain't all about me, and in that humility of having nothing and having dirty nappies with my grandchildren on my knees, them children, my grandchildren, the eldest is 14 and the youngest is about to be born, it opened up my heart so my heart could start speaking. And my heart spoke love and kindness. And in speaking love and kindness and in doing the action, it enabled my mind to become in line with who I am. Michael Emmett today, on the whole, is a man who likes to stay in the truth today, a man who's available, and I think we only keep what we got by giving it away. So I turn up, I work in prisons, I'm getting better, and for me today, the bottom line for me today is that I have to learn to love Michael, right? Or like Michael, or be kind to Michael.
And the trauma of the past?
The trauma of the past, it can play, it sometimes plays, but if I allow it to play in my mind, it closes my heart.
After it all, Michael Emmett, if you could have your time again, what would that look like? What would that be?
I think that I would prefer the life of working hard, getting a job, paying my way, But I love success, Stephen, and I think success is important if we can be successful and contribute and help other people. But if I was giving anyone any advice, I'd keep away from drugs, I'd definitely keep away from crime, and I'd work hard at school, and I'd learn to love myself so I could love other people.
Michael Emmett's story is as fascinating as it is unique. Born into a very elite, influential South London criminal family of the day, his journey was always going to be a roller coaster of criminality as he navigated his life forward. But what Michael took from that on his own personal journey is all too common. In many ways, he was groomed, as many people are, towards a life of organised crime. What he actually took internally, the experiences and the traumas that he had, are also common, of a life lived at the sharp end with so much criminality. All that glitters is not gold. And in the end, Michael saw through the life, as unfortunately many don't. There are no winners to a life of crime or living a life of senior criminality. Did Michael Emmett find his redemption in the end? Did he find the best of himself? And is he now moving towards that in his life? I believe he certainly is. The evidence is there and all the great work he does, but this is an inside job. And there are so many talented people out there who, if had better instruction, better role models, and more of life's healthier elements brought together at the right time for them, could have achieved so many wonderful things in their own journey. How do I know this? Because after my own personal transformation, I was like Michael Emmett, spending over 20 years in some of the UK's most high security prisons.